As children, we often don't realize just how fragile our lives are and how easy it is for us to lose the things that we love the most. But I learned this lesson very quickly when my little brother got sick. I grew up in Calabash, North Carolina, in the house that my father built. Calabash is a very tiny town, if you've never heard of it. It's got about 700 people. And with no other kids our age around for miles, my 3 brothers and sisters and I all became really close. But I always had a special connection with my younger brother, Joe. He was only a year younger than me, and he was very quiet and shy, and he had this speech impediment that made him very difficult to understand, even to our parents. So for Joe, the word snake would sound like nake, and my name, Rachel, would sound like Wachel, and it was hard for strangers especially to understand. So since I spent so much time with him, I could understand him the best, and I sort of became his translator. So Joe and I spent all our time together. We did everything together. And when he started kindergarten, I used to always walk him to his kindergarten classroom and then leave and go to my first grade classroom down the hall. In a time when the world seemed to be falling apart in the wake of September 11th, my family and the home we were in seemed safe, untouchable. At the end of a relatively normal day of first grade, as I was packing up my stuff, my older brother, Russell, rushed into the classroom and said, "You've got to come outside right now. Mom has Joe outside and he can't walk and we need to leave right now." So we rushed through the halls together and we burst through the double doors of the school's exit, and that's when I saw my little brother. My mom was holding his limp body, one arm under his head and the other under his legs, but his legs weren't bending. They were stiff at the knees and his elbows and wrists were swollen. And as we rushed him home, we tried to talk to him, but he wouldn't respond, just completely detached from what was going on around him. When we got home, we realized the reason that he couldn't stand up, the reason he couldn't walk, his knees were just as swollen as his elbows and his wrists, and he had these huge purple splotches on his legs, like giant bruises. So my parents rushed him to the hospital, and my brother, sister, and I went to my neighbor's house. And Shelly, my younger sister, she fell asleep immediately. She just didn't even care about what was going on, really. She was only 2. But Russell and I just stayed up trying to find a way to occupy ourselves and occupy our time and forget about what was happening. But unfortunately, there wasn't much to do, and all we really could do was just wait and think about what had happened. And all I could think about were the signs that I might have missed. Just a month ago on Thanksgiving, my little brother was sick. He was throwing up. He kept waking up in the mornings complaining of sore knees and problems just getting up. He was just tired all the time. So how could I have missed this then? How could I have not seen this coming? Joe woke up on a mat during nap time. He couldn't stand up, and he was too afraid to even say anything to the teacher. So when he needed me the most, I couldn't be there, and I couldn't be his voice. My mom finally arrived later that morning, very early in the morning rather, and she told us that Joe had a disease and he had to stay at the hospital for a while. She said the disease was called, and the only way I could understand it is, He-Knock shoreline, but the name didn't matter to me. What mattered to me was, is Joe going to be okay? And my mom said the scariest thing I'd ever heard in my 6 years of life: we don't know. Early the next morning, my brother, sister, mom, and I all packed in our old Aerostar van and headed off to the hospital. And on the way, my mom mentioned that Joe might look a little different when I saw him. But I thought, it's only been one night, and he's still Joe, so how bad could it be? But I was horrified when I saw my little brother in that hospital bed. His legs were covered in these red blood blisters, some of them popped and bleeding onto the hospital sheets. And his joints were all still just as swollen as yesterday. He had IVs in his arms and a catheter on the side of his bed. And to be blunt, I was repulsed at how the blisters and the swelling looked, and immediately, of course, ashamed that I felt that way towards my sick little brother. The visit was very quiet, and though my parents tried to make conversation, Joe was mostly either too scared or too tired to respond. And as we started to leave, as we filed out of the hospital room, Joe asked my father, "Daddy, why are they scared of me?" And I was immediately overwhelmed with guilt that I had let him down once again, but Before I could even respond, the doctor pulled my mom to the side. He was trying to speak quietly, but I could hear a few of the words: kidney damage, dialysis. He told her that they didn't know what was going to happen, that they just had to let the disease run its course and hope for the best. A few visits later, they were mostly the same as the first one, kind of quiet and a little awkward, but this last visit, Joe really seemed to be himself again. He was opening up, and he happily accepted a gift from my dad, which was his favorite video game, Real War, which he called Wheel War. And he seemed to be himself, and we were having a good time. But then, before long, it was time to leave. Visitors' hours were over. And for the first time, Joe seemed to be really distressed that we were leaving him. He didn't want to spend another night in the hospital. And he said, "I just wanted to come home. And it's, the noises here at night, I can't sleep. There's the machines and the nurses down the hall. I can hear them whispering and patients coughing in the rooms next to me." And again, I just felt helpless to relieve his discomfort. All I could tell him was that I would see him tomorrow and give him a hug and kiss goodnight. So we all left, and I cried in the back of the van on the way home because I just so wanted to bring my little brother home with me. But halfway through the drive, my father got a call, and it was the doctor. They had done a few more tests and decided that Joe could come home after all. And so we sped back to the hospital, and before long, my family was reunited and we were whole again. And Joe's recovery took quite a while. It took months for all the bruises to heal and the blisters, and for the swelling to return back to its normal size. And he had to restart his speech program at school, where he would eventually spend 5 or 6 years in this speech therapy program. He excelled, though, and by his senior year of high school, we watched as he accepted a first-place award in a national speech and writing competition. So Joe, he asked me to stop walking him to class many years ago, but I still can't resist going to visit him, where he's now a student of public policy at Chapel Hill, just 20 minutes away. And though my 3 siblings and I are now split between 4 different cities, we still all come back together at my family home in Calabash whenever we can. I regularly make the 3.5-hour drive back home with my little brother as my passenger. And although I know that I can't protect him from everything, I'll always be happy to bring Joe back home. Thank you.